On this episode of the WhereTraveler Podcast, our host Teresa Rodriguez visits the Statue of Liberty, whose official name is Liberty Enlightens the World, and talks with Jim Elkin, a national park ranger. He's been on the job protecting Lady Liberty since 1994, and one could argue that he knows as much about her as anyone. The way she was designed and built as a gift from France, as a memorial to our independence, and in celebration of the American centennial, and then brought and installed and is now maintained on her perch on Liberty Island. She was first sculpted out of clay and then scaled by Frédéric Auguste Bartholdi before she was built by Gustave Eiffel. The full-size statue, which was built entirely in France, began with a hand holding the torch. The hand arrived in 1876 in time for the Centennial Exposition in Philadelphia, after which it was moved and displayed at Madison Square for several years. Her head was constructed on time to be exhibited at the Paris World's Fair in 1878. Eventually, all the pieces were united to make the trip from France aboard the steamer ship Isère, which arrived in New York on June 17, 1885. It took over a year to construct her base atop Fort Wood and to assemble and install her on top of it, and she finally was dedicated by President Grover Cleveland on October 22, 1886. She faces southwest, where she can greet the ships that sail into New York Harbor, where she welcomed the more than 12 million immigrants who entered the United States through the portal of Ellis Island, and where she looks hopefully over all of us and strides into the future.
You're listening to the WhereTraveler Podcast, the audio companion for WhereTraveler magazine in print and online. For more information, go to wheretraveler.com. And now, Teresa Rodriguez, Editor-in-Chief for WhereTraveler San Francisco.
Hi, this is Teresa Rodriguez with WhereTraveler Podcast, and we are at the Statue of Liberty. I'm with Jim Elkin, who is a national park ranger here, and he has been working on the island since 1994. Is that correct, Jim?
Absolutely.
Oh my goodness, what a job. How did you end up working at the Statue of Liberty?
I was pulled into it because of my love of natural history and art, cultural history, and this is a merge of everything. This is a great place to work because though it is a first and foremost national monument, it is also a migratory corridor for all kinds of both airborne and waterborne creatures. So
that's really interesting. So before the Statue of Liberty showed up here, what was this island actually?
It was Bedloe's Island, a natural island, about 12.5 acres, and it had a fort, of all things. The 11-pointed star-shaped thing at the very bottom of the statue has nothing to do with the statue, predates the statue, was there before the statue was an idea in anyone's head. What it really is a fortification known as Fort Wood. So that was there, and it was so formidable and intimidating that no one dare challenge it. So a fort that really doesn't do much. And when an artist by the name of Mr. Bartholdi happened to come in on June 22nd of 1871, he wrote in his diary on that date, "The little island seems to be the best site." And that's when he chose the center of that fort as the precise spot for his New American, as he would call her.
That's fantastic. So when he thought New American, was he thinking of the Statue of Liberty specifically, or was he thinking about a statue?
Absolutely. This had been a long-planned way to send a message to the higher-ups in France for the need for freedom in France. So essentially the statue, though it seems like a altruistic gift, is actually a political vehicle for governmental change out in France. So they were unhappy with the restrictive government that they were enduring at the time and wanted to link up their government with America. And what better way than to give an enormous gift celebrating their friendship that went back as early as the Revolutionary War with us. And it links us up And also, it sends a message of freedom to the higher-ups in France.
Did it work?
It did work. Eventually, it did work, yes. And it was something that people on both sides of the Atlantic loved and still love. And people from all over the world have now come here. It's almost a sacred route to come to America. You have to come to the Statue of Liberty. It's a given.
Yeah, it truly is, right? It is truly a destination that represents freedom for our country. Now, can you tell our listeners what is written on the foot of the statue that we like to say a lot?
Well, on the fourth level of the pedestal in 1903 was a bronze plaque put there. Georgina Schuyler, who was a lover of the arts, humanitarian, was in love with the new Colossus, Emma Lazarus, wonderful writing. That she, it was a sonnet that was penned to make money for a then unfinished pedestal. So Joseph Pulitzer encouraged Emma Lazarus to write a manuscript, and this was submitted by her. And really the new Colossus, which is perhaps the most powerful words ever penned about the statue, November 2nd, 1883. And I can recite it for you if you wanted to.
Please, I do.
Not like the brazen giant of Greek fame, with conquering limbs astride from land to land. Here at our sea-washed sunset gate shall stand a mighty woman with a torch, whose flame is the imprisoned lightning, and her name Mother of Exiles. From her beacon hand glows worldwide welcome. Her mild eyes command the air-bridged harbor that twin cities frame. Keep ancient lands your storied pomp, cries she with silent lips. Give me your tired, your poor, your huddled masses yearning to breathe free, the wretched refuse of your teeming shore. Send these, the homeless, tempest-tossed to me. I lift my lamp beside the golden door.
Oh my gosh, that is so moving. I have not heard that in full, and I'm literally in tears over here because what that represents is so powerful. How long did it take you to memorize that?
I'm not a fast learner. But the thing is, it's such a powerful piece. It's so beautifully written, and it has mileage because it can be used at Ellis Island and the Statue of Liberty, which are both our sites.
Yeah, let's have just a really quick conversation about Ellis Island and the relationship between the Statue of Liberty. Did one come before the other?
Yes, the statue predates Ellis Island, and the whole association with the immigrant plight really people blur the distinction between the symbolism of the statue and this. The original message had nothing to do with the immigrant plight, but it became associated with it. It has so many meanings because it was used during the war effort. It was used for a variety of reasons, and it's still evolving what the symbolism of the statue really means. But it really became associated because this is the busiest port in all of America. So when you enter America through New York, the first thing you're seeing is the Statue of Liberty. She greets all the newcomers. And as people pass by after a transatlantic voyage, which was a harrowing experience early on and gradually became a little less terrifying as the technology evolved and the age of the steamship allowed for transatlantic voyage in a mere 2 weeks, people would pass by the statue after this awful voyage and see her, and it was a mesmerizing image. It's just so incredible. The tallest statue of a humanoid in the world back then, and truly breathtaking.
Yeah, I can't even imagine that because, this was before we had any skyscrapers in New York, and this was the skyscraper. Yeah, I can't.
And that's what I like to impress on people is you look at the skyline of New York and you assume there were always skyscrapers there. But when the statue was unveiled in 1886, the tallest thing in New York made by man was the Brooklyn Bridge.
Wow.
Which only came up to her pedestal. So it's this became the gigantic thing that kind of ushered in the age of skyscrapers, because there is a tie-in with the engineering within and skyscraper technology.
Yeah, let's talk about this because, this technology or this, was built 140 years ago. So the technology that the French used to build this, how was it actually brought to the United States and put together?
So it was completely built in Paris, just the statue, no pedestal. The pedestal was our responsibility. The agreement was we receive her for free if we provide the thing she'll stand on. In any event, she rose up from the Gadget Gautier studios of Paris. First is a skeletal structure. So it was Eiffel's iron skeleton that really was a mind-boggling new creation that the world had never seen, and covered with thin copper, just 2 pennies in thinness.
Wow.
And once it was completely built, they had to a little problem. The Atlantic Ocean had to get it over that. So what they had to do was disassemble it all, box it up into 214 wooden shipping crates, which were put aboard a train. How to get to the train, though?
Right.
No trucks. Trucks had not yet been invented.
Wow.
So they had horse-drawn buggies and wagons transporting the crates to a train that would bring her from Paris to the French port of Rouen, where it was all loaded into the hull of the awaiting steamship Isère. One ship carried her across the Atlantic Ocean.
Wow.
It hit a storm. It ran out of fuel. It recovered on the Azores Islands, continued on its way, and made her way into our harbor. And there was Fort Wood, still in its entirety. And in the middle was the unfinished pedestal. So we had a lot of trouble getting the public to be excited about funding the pedestal, because it was at a terrible time in history when we had just emerged out of the ashes of our worst conflict, the American Civil War. Our President Lincoln had been assassinated. The entire country was undergoing reconstruction. And out comes word, we're getting this exotic artwork from France, and we not only get to pay, we get to pay double of the French. It's getting to be a crisis, in other words.
Wow.
So the rescuer of the fundraising is always accredited to Joe Pulitzer. He was the head of a newspaper, and I know nowadays people say newspaper, who cares? But as we not only swim, we drown in media nowadays. But back then, a newspaper was highly significant as a form of media. And what we had to do was prey on human vanity. So who doesn't want to see their name on the front page of the greatest newspaper of its day, the New York World? Just give me a penny or more, I get your name on the front page. For those who dare to give me only a penny, one half the price of my 2-cent newspaper, I'll be forced to print that you only gave me a penny. So they gave more than that. The funding flooded in. His other great idea was not to tell donors when the name would appear, so people furiously bought copies of the New York World in the hope of seeing their name, and the subscription rate went through the roof. So money generated would save the statue from an embarrassment.
So let's put that into terms of like how much the pedestal cost then and how much that would cost in today's dollar.
Yeah, it's really hard to imagine the transition of value. Suffice it to say, it was about $300,000 back then, and it's astronomical nowadays. So our economy is completely evolved.
Why did it cost so much back then?
Well, this is a thing that we couldn't even do nowadays. If you if you would try to rebuild this statue, the cost would be in the billions. It's just unbelievable, the amount of energy and raw materials needed for this. People aren't aware of how much wood alone. You think wood? There's no wood on the thing.
Yeah, I don't see any wood.
But the wood was the framework for concrete. This is the largest concrete mass on planet Earth. 54 million pounds of Rosendale, New York concrete.
Really?
Anchored her into the earth in the center parade ground of Fort Wood. And it's covered with Leeds Island, Connecticut granite. And then all the copper was pounded into wooden forms.
I'm Teresa Rodriguez, Editor-in-Chief of Where San Francisco, and you're listening to WhereTraveler Podcast, where we love to talk about anything related to travel. For more information about this episode, as well as WhereTraveler, be sure to check out wheretraveler.com.
The copper was pounded into wooden forms, so there were thousands of pieces of wood that were handcrafted to make the molds necessary to shape the copper. we don't think of that, but it must have taken forests of wood to just create the French half.
Yeah, how did he do that? How did he, because you look at the Statue of Liberty, and it really does look like a beautiful, flowing,
organic thing.
Yeah,
Yep.
so how did he create that organic flow?
Well, the brilliance of the whole project was, as things start small, they have to get bigger. So he started very humbly with a 4-foot study model and butchered it up into 310 little pieces. And then each piece was meticulously measured all around and enlarged using calipers and plumb lines, enlarged into plaster once, twice, and lastly 3 times. Each time she was enlarged, it took 9,000 measurements.
Wow.
And the plaster had to be smoothed over wood, and then when dried, wooden forms were taken of these positive shapes that had to be perfectly crafted. And then the copper, mostly from Norway, would be heated with torch and pounded repeatedly with wooden mallet in the ancient process known as repousser, the French word to push forward, which is what happens to the metal during repousser.
Holy Moses. So, I'm looking at her shoulder, her right shoulder with her arm up in the air, and there's so much detail of like all of those little wrinkles. So that was made full size with him pounding hot copper.
Well, he had a crew, because no human being could ever do this thing alone. So a crew of approximately 60 workers. And that you bring up a great point, because when we see the Statue of Liberty, we immediately see humanoid form. But really, the statue is a study in the way drapery falls on the human form.
Yeah.
During the neoclassic period, they were very much interested in getting every little crease and dimple in the cloth perfect. And you can look at the enormous attention to detail, and that's really the true beauty. Just look at around the sleeves and the shoulder area, and it's just a beautiful, beautiful thing.
Why did he choose this outfit? And, please, I'm here to learn from you.
Sure.
So what is that outfit that she's wearing called, and why did the artist chose that outfit versus something that would be representative of the clothing in France or in the United States in the 1800s?
So this idea of liberty is an ancient idea. And originally the Romans had a goddess named Libertas. And she's modeled after a goddess of freedom, Libertas. And lots of the original symbolism had to be altered and updated. So originally, Libertas could be depicted with her Phrygian bonnet, which was a cap on her head that said she was a newly freed slave, or she might be holding a scepter of sovereignty in hand, the staff that said she was the master of her future, of her destiny. She might have a broken pitcher at her feet, symbolizing the end of her life in servitude as a slave pouring beverages for others. And she might even have a freedom-loving cat, the symbol of independence, which I really love. And as a cat lover, I was appalled at the lack of cat up there, but not to worry if you're in my situation, because 6 years before this statue, the artist had created a giant cat called the Lion of Belfort.
Really?
So you could see this amazing stone lion, which is out near the city of Colmar in France. So you can just Google it or Yahoo Lion of Belfort and see images of it, or it's just spectacular.
That's fantastic. So let's talk about the flame. What is number one, what's that flame made out of? It's absolutely beautiful.
Yes, it's really the most fascinating part of the statue in many ways. It goes back to her true name, which is not the Statue of Liberty. Yes, we have all been lied to all our lives. This is not the Statue of Liberty. What then is it?
What then?
It's Liberty Enlightening the World. And it is believed to come from the title of a painting by A.L. Janet Lang, this French artist who had done this painting of a liberty-like female sitting on a throne with an uplifted torch called The Republic Enlightening the World. So this being Liberty Enlightening the World. Now, enlightening. Now, in order to light, you have to have some source of light.
Right.
And when you think of a cartoon character getting a great idea, what pops up over the head?
A light bulb.
A light bulb. This is pre-light bulb. So we have a torch, and that's it should be thought of as enlightenment, the way you would use a flashlight to get through the darkness. And she's getting you through the darkness of oppression and tyranny, and she's enlightening people to the concept of breaking free.
Wow.
And there is breaking free going on there, but nobody sees it. And that's my favorite part of the statue. The part that nobody sees. It's gigantic. It's made of metal, yet it remains invisible because of the perspective. We come to the island traditionally by boat. We get off, we walk around, we look up at her, and it is impossible to see what's going on at her ankles. Well, then why not go to the crown and look down? Even from the crown, you can't see it. What about the torch? Even if you could go to the torch, which has been closed to the public since 1916, looking down from there, you still can't see it. You need to be in an aircraft above her looking down to see that she's not just standing, hanging out, wasting time loitering, but quite in the act of stepping forward. And that's why when you look at her, you see right now her right sandal.
Yeah.
That was the original entrance to the statue in Paris when she was just a statue and no pedestal or fort. So that made sense to enter through the underside of the sandal. But that's not the big message. The big message is that as she steps forward, she's caught in the act of breaking the shackles and chains of oppression, of tyranny that are around her ankles. So she's caught in the act of breaking free.
Fantastic.
That's the most powerful thing about her.
Now, is there a reason why she's, because I envision like freedom, stepping forward with your right foot. I'm just thinking. Mm-hmm. Is there a reason why it's her
left foot?
Yeah, it's her left foot.
She's just caught in the act of stepping forward. So it's just I think it has to do with the right foot being the entranceway. And that would be the focal point of people entering the statue originally.
Right. And how about the crown? Can you tell me about the crown and what that symbolizes? Mm-hmm. Because, I'll be honest with you, that's a spooky looking crown. It looks like
absolutely.
You could do some damage with that.
And the crown is actually not a crown. It's a diadem and a nimbus. So the diadem is this arc of precious metal with gemstones inserted into it that women of power and influence would wear back in Roman and Greek times. So the modern counterpart you see on Miss America's head, the tiara. Could France afford such extravagance on the head of a statue that wasn't even going to stay in France? Obviously not. So the arc of metal is not platinum, gold, nor silver. It's copper. There are no diamonds, emeralds, or sapphires, but plates of silicon dioxide, plates of glass. So there's 25 windows that you peer through. So we have the diadem that I just described, and above it is the rayed headdress. So that's the other half of the crown called the nimbus. And it goes back to the one inspiration for this statue that is the most important of all. It overshadows all other inspirations. You can come up with all sorts of things, but the main thing that made the artist create this big thing was the legendary Colossus of Rhodes, which was a 98-foot-tall hammered bronze statue of Helios, the sun god, said to have stood at the entrance to the harbor of Rhodes, destroyed in an ancient earthquake in 300 BC. Nonetheless, this rayed headdress Bartholdi would have come out of his nimbus. And we hear 7 continents, 7 seas all the time, but that's possibly just hogwash.
So yeah.
The real reason for 7 is a visual work of art created by a visual artist, and putting 8 rays up there does not work.
It doesn't.
6 rays looks awful. 7 is absolute magic on the eye because you have the 1 in the center and the 3 on each side, and it's so symmetrical and harmonious. It's absolutely stunning.
It is. And her hair.
Her hair. It's called the Gibson tuck. That was the hairstyle. That
was the hairstyle of France
of the day. Yeah.
So we do have a little bit of fashion influence here.
Absolutely.
In the statue.
Well, he's an artist and he's from France, so he's not going to exclude that.
I'm surprised she's not wearing a high heel.
Well, the face is believed to be modeled after his mom, though there's no definitive evidence of that, but because he never fully stated this. But we surmise that because she was such a powerful influence in his life, and because she had such strong features, she would be the perfect face of a goddess.
I love it. That's fantastic. So now let's talk about...
And then the other thing about the face to always remember, try to put a handle on what expression she wears.
Yeah, what is that expression?
Absolute blank. Totally expressionless. And it is believed it was influenced by the Sphinx of Giza, which the artist beheld in 1856 on his trip to Egypt to be inspired by the giant colossi out there. And the Sphinx of Giza, staring into eternity, infinity, unchanged, unmoved by time itself, that blank expression defying time, would kind of say liberty is eternal.
I never even thought of that, which is really interesting because you think of the Mona Lisa, who's got this little smirk, and you think of Rembrandt's and artwork that they do show emotion, and she really doesn't have.
Yeah, she has this blank expression for other reasons as well, because back then, if you look at 19th century photography, you'll rarely see a smile.
Right.
And the reason for that is you would have to sit for prolonged periods of time, and holding a happy face had to be quite painful. People would forego this.
Forego the happy.
So most of the Victorian imagery, people are not grinning or smiling. You'll rarely see that ever.
That's
it's the technology of the day.
Right. That's so insightful.
It wasn't a selfie,
What is she holding in her left hand?
Yeah, that's the thing that everybody misidentifies
it's not
as
an
a
iPad.
book. Yeah,
it's not an iPad, people.
The man was a visionary, and he worked with Steve Jobs. No, this is not true. No, the item in the left hand is accused of being a book. But let's look at this for a minute to dispel this myth.
Okay.
There's no front or back cover.
Correct.
There are no pages.
Correct.
It's tapered toward the bottom, and on the upper left and right-hand corner, we have notches cut out.
Yes.
So if not a book, what then is it?
What then?
It's definitively representing a stone tablet. And more importantly, a Roman stone tablet, the tabula ansata, which is the inscribed tablet of ancient Roman times, which was a tablet of law. So it's kind of saying under law and order you could achieve liberty. Kind of an unspoken message.
Let's repeat what you just said, because what you just said was really, really profound.
Okay.
Yeah.
Under law and order you can achieve liberty. You don't have to get it through violent means. You can get it through civil means.
Did you hear that all? Because that is pretty profound. I mean, wow. And now we've got...
That's the boat.
The boat. Thank you, boat, for reminding us.
Now, on the tablet is the powerful date that is written in Roman numerals, because Roman goddess holds Roman tablet on which Roman numerals are there. And these are archaic. You see them on Big Ben, and that's about it. They're not even on watch faces anymore. Roman numerals, people go, what the heck does that say? M, D, C, C, L, X, X, V, I? What does all that mean? Well, M is 1,000, D is 500, CCs are 200, 100 each, in other words. L is 50, X, that's 20. So that's 1,770, and all we need is 6. V is 5, and I is 1. That's 6. 1776.
That is fantastic.
Now, what does that mean? Warm weather, fireworks, and barbecues to the average American. But it also has to do with the fact we would have lost the Revolutionary War had we not, as the American colonies early on, turned to our allies, the French, to bring over supplies, soldiers, and leadership like Lafayette to help us break free.
Thank you, Lafayette. Yes.
So we broke free from Great Britain with the help of France. And there's our 1776. That's why that date is so powerful. It's a Franco-American friendship symbol.
That's fantastic. So let's talk about coming to the Statue of Liberty. How can people visit? They're here in New York. What are the steps to get to the Statue of Liberty?
2 words are perhaps the most powerful words to remember of all. Plan ahead.
Besides law and order.
Yeah. Besides law and order, you must plan ahead. If you don't plan ahead, you'll be disappointed, because most people are under the mistaken impression that they're going all the way to the crown without making any reservation at all. And the reason that happened was, for countless years, you just did that. You would come here and it was Liberty for All. And Liberty for All was a wonderful idea, but because of the logistics of the structure, it doesn't work. We used to have 4 to 6 hour long lines.
Wow.
People were having babies and dying in those lines. It was a horrible thing. 650 medical emergencies a year on average,
Wow.
2 deaths a year. It was terrible. So now it's Liberty for the prearranged. So if you make the time to prearrange, you'll have a wonderful visit. And most people who plan ahead are greatly rewarded by getting all the way to the crown. Now, what do you have to do? Well, the crown is not the big thing you saw in the movies, because what you saw in the movies are movie sets, and they're created artificially outside of the actual structure they're representing, and they don't get the scale right, either by accident or purposefully, because in order to have an action scene, you can't film in a tiny, tiny place that only holds about 7 people.
Really? It only holds 7 people at a time?
7 people
Yikes.
comfortably.
Oof.
After that, it becomes like a crowded subway car, and it's not fun. So we regulate the numbers to make it pleasant and make it safe and easy to evacuate if need be. And it's a great thing because there's no longer a line. We always were plagued by lines. Nobody enjoyed them. The workers surely didn't, and the poor visitors absolutely resented 6 hours in a line.
Yeah.
So now you go right up.
And how do you get up there?
And you go up.
Is it an elevator or do you
We
walk?
have handicap accessibility up to a point. You can get to the top of the pedestal with assistance by elevator. After that, it's you and you alone.
There you go, people.
Your left and right elevators, your legs will bring you the rest of the way up. So I believe you should go all the way from the bottom up by steps. And I'll tell you why. Because if you get things too easy, you don't appreciate them. So if you go by steps, it's 377 steps. And that sounds like a horrific number. But it's usually under 10 minutes.
And
even
how
for
many
the average
stories would
person.
that be?
So pretend you're on the 20th floor of a building in Manhattan.
I love the way that you're starting on the 20th floor.
That's where you go.
Okay.
It's the 20th floor. You're 20 stories
Wow.
up.
Oh,
That's
it's
the
20
ultimate goal is 20 stories above the ground. It's
Wow.
377 steps. And as I said, it's not a race anymore. You take your time. You stop along the way. They have platforms within to rest. Use your camera. Enjoy the beautiful architecture, engineering of Eiffel, 3 years before his Eiffel Tower. So you can see some of the actual engineering that is almost unchanged other than some coats of paint over it.
That's so crazy. And how many people visit the island every day? Let's just say right now we're in summer, so
summer's our
high
busiest.
season, high
This
season.
is our busiest season. July being our busiest month of the year, and we can get 20 to 25,000 visitors in a single day.
Oh my gosh!
So, yes, it's they don't all come at once. It's through the course of an entire day, and there are boats with huge capacities that put people on and off the island. So the lines are not too terrible like they used to be. We have a lot of fluidity in the movement of the crowds.
And how about does a boat go like every half hour, every 15 minutes here and back? How does that work?
As the season gets busier, our boat schedules adjust accordingly. Mm-hmm. So right now we have approximately every 15 minutes.
Oh, wow.
So that's not a bad scenario. You don't wait too long. And the boats have, as I said, an enormous capacity, so they usually move whole lines right on there and get them to the next stop, which is usually Ellis Island, on their way back to New York. We also have a New Jersey boat, which goes directly back to Liberty State Park.
So can you visit both? Can you visit the Statue of Liberty and Ellis Island? Or are those
and
two
that's
separate?
the beauty of this park, because most national sites, you get one site and that's it. Here you get two for the same price.
That's
so
fantastic.
you get to go to Statue of Liberty, and then you can, if you wish, see Ellis Island as well. And it's two unique sites. They're somehow vaguely related, but they're separate entities. They're on their own islands.
And how about precautions? Let's just talk about what people can bring and can't bring on the island.
My advice to anyone visiting would be to travel light. If you travel light, it really speeds your journey quite a bit. If you bring backpacks, food and drinks and lots of cumbersome items, you're going to have to lock these things up prior to entering. You'll go through security not once but twice, so that's a lot of hassle. I would recommend leaving all your big stuff in your place before coming out, and travel light, and you'll enjoy your visit a lot more, and there's less to lose.
Right, and then you've got food here
we
and
have concession
souvenirs.
on both islands.
So you don't really need to bring anything. You can, and I just want to let our listeners know that you do go through a TSA type security check
Very
where
strict.
it's very strict. This is a federal land, and it is such an important monument to the United States that they take every precaution possible to keep Lady Liberty safe.
Yep, because on Halloween Day of 1984, this was added to a unique list of world sites. This isn't just national, it's world. It's up there with places like the Pyramids of Giza, the Great Wall of China, the Taj Mahal in India. This is one of these unique places that is beyond just national, and we take extra caution to protect her. So it's understandable in light of things like 9/11, 2001. We want to be extra careful. So it's for everybody's own good to have extra security, and it makes everyone feel safer who visit.
Yes. This has been so enlightening, Jim. I just want you to repeat that last line again of the poem. That just was so awesome and profound. It gave me goosebumps.
Okay, The New Colossus, written November 2nd of 1883.
Not like the brazen giant of Greek fame, with conquering limbs astride from land to land. Here at our sea-washed sunset gates shall stand a mighty woman with a torch whose flame is the imprisoned lightning, and her name, Mother of Exiles. From her beacon hand glows the worldwide welcome, her mild eyes command the air-bridged harbor that twin cities frame. Keep, ancient lands, your storied pomp, cries she, with silent lips. Give me your tired, your poor, your huddled masses yearning to breathe free. The wretched refuse of your teeming shore. Send these, the homeless, tempest-tossed to me. I lift my lamp beside the golden door.
Thank you, listeners, for joining me. You've been listening to the WhereTraveler Podcast, hosted by me, Teresa Rodriguez. This episode was produced and directed by Pete A. Turner, John Leon Guerrero, and Victoria Shepard. To listen to this podcast, find out more information about the crew, as well as WhereTraveler, visit wheretraveler.com, your ultimate destination guide.